starts November 6th.
Welcome to Time About the Movies, everybody. Halloween is come and gone, so you know what that means. It's the holiday movie season, the final push for the movies for the big bucks in 2015. And the next 8 weeks are going to be very filled with a number of classic franchises returning with new stories, from the Peanuts gang to James Bond to Rocky, all the way up to Star Wars. So, got a lot to get to here. We're taking a look at 5 movies today on November 6, 2015, and we're starting off with the biggest of the new releases, Daniel Craig starring in his 4th James Bond film, Spectre. The story follows James Bond's first encounter with the global crime organization of the same name, marking the group's first appearance in an Eon production film since Diamonds Are Forever, and tying Craig's series of films together with an overarching storyline. Several recurring characters, including M, Q, and Miss Moneypenny, return with the new additions of Lea Seydoux as Dr. Madeline Swan, Dave Bautista as Mr. Hinks, Monica Bellucci as Lucia Scaria, and also the appearance of Blofeld, played by Christoph Waltz. And, yeah, we're starting off on kind of a rough note here because, we come to Spectre, which is the first time Bond's faced off against them since Diamonds Are Forever, and the result is a gigantic misfire of a film. I mean, oh my god. Like, this is right up there with some of the worst James Bond movies ever made. And you wouldn't think of it that way from the trailers and all that, even though it does have one element that I really like about this over some of the other movies, but we'll get to that later on. But, Casino Royale started on the right note. Quantum of Solace was a misstep, mostly because of the writer's strike. Skyfall brought it back. And this one is easily the worst one since Die Another Day, and probably the second worst Bond movie after Die Another Day. That's how bad this is. If this has to be worse than Die Another Day, actually Die Another Day, I think I said was the worst one. This is right up there with that. I mean, what's worse about this movie is that it has a lot going for it, but right from the beginning, it just goes off the rails so quickly. You got this great one-track shot that you think is going to take up the entire intro, but then, for no reason, they just start cutting it. But because you could have continued that shot with the entire sequence, but no, the movie just says, fuck it, we're just going to cut it off. And it'd be enough alone to hate on the opening alone, but then it just gets stupider from there. There's like this gigantic building collapse that happens. You see debris all over the place, but nobody's running away in fear. They just go back to partying, man. Woo, Mardi Gras, and all that type of stuff. I don't think it was Mardi Gras, but you get the idea. It's just like, it's insulting, and basically what the movie implies is that people don't care about buildings crumbling down because they're partying their asses off, they're getting drunk. I'm sorry, I'm mistaken, but they do run away, but only when a helicopter flying around erratically in the air is there. It's just like, a building is not much for you, but a helicopter flying around erratically is enough for you to run away. Like, I mean, I understand that would cause anybody to run, but not from a building falling down. We're not even 5 minutes into the movie, and I'm already questioning the logic of this movie, and there's still 2 hours and 15 minutes left. And it doesn't help that the opening titles, which are usually the best part of the Bond movies, are so bad. I mean, they literally ripped off the intro from David Fincher's Go Over the Dragon tattoo in some parts. Like, it's pretty much copycatting that, which, I mean, it makes it even worse because the best thing about this movie is the song by Sam Smith, Writing on the Wall. It's one of my favorite James Bond songs, high up there. But then again, I'm a huge Sam Smith fan. But the way it's played in that intro, it makes it sound even worse combined with that intro. I mean, it's abysmal, a mess of a beginning of a film. But on top of that, nothing new or creative is being done with here. There's not one damn thing done in this movie that hasn't been done in any other Bond movies. And the reason I think this movie fails simply because of one thing and one thing only: Sony. Sony is the reason why the movie failed as a Bond film, because once again, they took control of a franchise and directed the movie again. It's the second time in the last 2 years that they took over a film in a high-profile franchise, the other one being Spider-Man with The Amazing Spider-Man 2. I mean, Sony put this movie into production without a finished script, just like Amazing Spider-Man 2. And second, the script that they went into was filled with nothing but things that have happened in other Bond movies over and over again. Plus, it's way too expensive, man. $250 million for this, just like another over-budgeted mess from Sony, Spider-Man 3. So, yeah, I'm putting the blame solely on Sony on this, but then again, Daniel Craig really isn't helping himself, because even he looks like he doesn't want to do this anymore. Like, you can see Craig has been so negative about you can see why he's been so negative about returning to this role, because of stuff like this. It's like he's being forced to do some of the stuff he does once again, and it really feels forced, especially with his hookups, like Pierce Brosnan was in Die Another Day. Like, watch that scene with Monica Bellucci. The chemistry does not work, and he basically comes off as kind of a rapist the way he just forces himself onto her. So it's like he met her at her husband's funeral and managed to find out where she lived and to know that she was about to be killed. I mean, it's so forced. Belushi is just wasted in there, and the only reason she's even in that scene, I think, is because everyone wants to see her get naked, which it's PG-13. It's not going to happen, but hey, you see her in sexy lingerie, so I guess that works. But it's so bad that it doesn't even know who the main relationship of the film is supposed to be around. Is it Miss Moneypenny, played by Naomi Harris again, who shares a lot of the chemistry of Bond more than anybody else, but then all of a sudden it just changes over to the Leah Seydoux character, and the mood changes onto her, and it makes no sense. Like, you can't figure out who Bond is supposed to get with by the end. You trust more by the end of it. But not only that, the way the movie tries to cram in the past James Bond movies into this with the bad guy is so forced. Like, it's amazing nobody looked at the script and said, wait a minute, this creates a lot of plot holes from other movies here. That's how bad it is. And the stupid plot twist, I mean, it's done in corny action films. The bottom line is that Blofeld is actually James Bond's brother. Yeah, they took from the Sylvester Stallone Judge Dredd movie, for God's sakes. Like, it happened here. Like, I cannot believe how stupid this movie becomes. The villain's plan is so stupid and predictable, too. It gets so bad that for the second consecutive film in a row, they rip off The Dark Knight again. The whole final play by the villain mimics the Joker so much, it's a plagiarism. I mean, can the producers please stop trying to convince us that James Bond is their Batman, because he's just not. I mean, this movie is just a mess on so many levels. Now, to be fair, there are a couple of things I do like about it. I do like the chemistry between Craig and Harris, as well as Craig and Seydoux. Christoph Waltz's Blofeld's actually not bad. He pulls it off nicely. His opening scene where he's mostly shown in shadows and gets to James Bond's head, that's brilliantly handled. Dave Bautista as his henchman is really good. He doesn't speak a lot, but he kicks a lot of ass. The cinematography is really good, too. This is Hoyt van Hoytema, who did the cinematography for The Fighter, Her, Interstellar. I mean, he does a really good job with the camera in this. Not quite as good as Roger Deakins, but pretty close. And again, I really like the Sam Smith song. I love the Adele song. It's definitely the best James Bond song, but Sam Smith's Writing on the Wall is the second best one to me. Third probably be Duran Duran's A View to a Kill, and then Gina Easton's For Your Eyes Only. That's just my personal take on that. But other than that, though, this is a waste of a Bond movie. You could tell it was going to be trouble from the very beginning when they didn't have a finished script to go into this, and it just falls flat from that point forward. It's a mess of a movie. I think it's even bigger of a disappointment because with Quantum of Solace, Solace had an excuse because of the writer's strike. This has no excuse, and I really wouldn't mind it if another studio took it over from Sony, because they messed this one up big time, and eventually it did go over to Universal before it eventually went back over to MGM with No Time to Die, which we're still long away from that, because I'm pretty sure they were trying to convince Daniel Craig to come back for this, and I don't think he'd want to do it at this point. But I mean, Spectre at this point is the second James Bond movie, the second worst James Bond movie I've ever seen, and that's saying a lot. One of the biggest misfires of the year, no question about it. So yeah, we got to the bad movie, so let's go ahead and get to the really good movie. And I do mean a really good movie. Another one of my favorite movies of the year. Let's see what Blue Sky Studios can do with the Peanuts characters in the Peanuts movie.
She said hello!
The Peanuts movie. Dream Big, November 6th.
Dream Big was probably also what 20th Century Fox and Blue Sky Studios were hoping for with the Peanuts movie, because let's think about this for a second. You got a CG animated Peanuts movie made by, produced by Paul Feig, who had found success a couple of years prior with The Heat and Spy and Bridesmaids. And you have a company like Blue Sky Studios, who has had 3 consecutive bombs up to this point: Ice Age Continental Drift, Epic, and Rio 2. So, yeah, if anybody was going to be out there about being mad about this movie, it was probably going to be this guy right here, because kind of like with Illumination Entertainment, which I kind of touched on their most recent film, the Super Mario Galaxy movie, in a video that's going to be up by tomorrow, by the time you be watching this. If you're watching this tonight on April 4th, it'll be up tomorrow. But, you know, there was a point where Illumination was in the same Blue Sky Studios was in the same place that Illumination is right now, where they were on the cusp of losing every bit of credibility they had. They had a lot of really good movies in the beginning, but starting with Continental Drift, Epic, and Rio 2, they were on a slump, and it looked like there's no way they were coming back from that. So there was a lot riding on this movie overall. They had been hyping this movie up all the way since Rio 2 was first in theaters back in April of 2014. So nearly 2 years of marketing on this movie. big, big risk here. Did it work? I would say it did. Charlie Brown, Snoopy, Linus and Lucy, and the rest of the beloved Peanuts gang make their big screen debut. Just pretend like those Peanuts films from the 60s, 70s, and 80s didn't exist, apparently. But if you wanted to say make their big screen debut, well, actually, I probably should read this because it literally says the next sentence is like they've never been seen before in state-of-the-art 3D animation. Okay, so there you go. So forget what I said at the beginning there, but Charlie Brown, the world's most beloved underdog, embarks on a heroic and epic quest, while his best pal, the lovable beagle Snoopy, takes the disguise to pursue his arch nemesis, the Red Baron. From the imagination of Charles Schultz and the creator of the Ice Age films, the Peanuts movie will prove that every underdog has its day. So, yeah, we've seen what happens to some of our childhood favorites when they're put into modern times, and of all the places to make a Peanuts movie, why would anybody in the Schultz family think that Blue Sky Studios would be perfect? I mean, Disney, DreamWorks, Warner Brothers, none of those studios came to mind. They went to Blue Sky Studios. I mean, people thought, but I probably would have agreed that most people thought they were fucking crazy for doing that, but much to my surprise, and surely it will be to everyone else's, Blue Sky Studios not only redeemed themselves in the best way possible, but this is probably one of their best movies ever, if not their best film. And it's the second best animated movie of the year behind Inside Out. I mean, that's how good this movie is. Who would have guessed that 20th Century Fox, the company that had put some abortions of some of the most beloved cartoon franchises like Alvin and the Chipmunks, Fat Albert, Garfield, would do justice to the Peanut characters? And I'll be damned that they pulled it off, and pulled it off pretty perfectly. This is very much like Inside Out, a near-perfect film. It not only manages to present a unique and very creative form of animation with a mix of both stop-motion and CG, along with some 2D animation being thrown into the mix, it really did look like something that Bill Melendez and the original team behind the animated specials would work on if they got to do a CG movie. You can see that Blue Sky really put their heart into making the Peanuts world coming to life in CG. And like I said, it was a game changer, because not too long after this, you have other movies that were copying this, that were doing what this movie did. You know, Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse was the big deal, but then the sequel did that. Puss in Boots did that. I mean, a lot of DreamWorks' animated films that came after that did that. Sony's films did a lot do that. K-pop Demon Hunters is an example of that. Turning Red. I mean, you can tell that this unique trend of animation that we've seen since then, since this movie came out, started with this film. And yet, really, it's one of those films that doesn't get talked about a whole lot, honestly. It's a really good movie. The voice actors are very good. They're mostly kids, just like the animated properties before them. They do a great job of representing each characters, the way that they play and share their different personalities that fit the characters very well. The way the film uses Bill Melendez's voice as Snoopy and Woodstock is nicely done. I like Kristen Chenoweth showing up just doing like little sound bites like Snoopy for the role of Fifi. She's actually really good, and you can hardly tell it's her doing those bites. It's very well done. The music is really good here. Like in that trailer, you hear a lot of pop music, and while there is that pop music in there, it's not distracting whatsoever. I mean, mostly you get the classic music by Vince Guaraldi, some newer scores by Christoph Beck. It combines very nicely, and Beck does a good job with his interpretations of the tracks. Even the Meghan Trainor songs in the film really do work well. Yeah, there are going to be people who complain about the Trainor songs, but remember that A Boy Named Charlie Brown had songs by Rod McCune, who was a big deal back in the 60s, so as long as the songs fit the tone of the world of the Peanuts, I don't see the problem, and thankfully the songs in this do work very well overall. The story structure is nicely done. It fits into the same format as A Boy Named Charlie Brown, where you have, again, kind of like with the Super Mario Galaxy movie, except that where that movie did it wrong, this one does it well, because A Boy Named Charlie Brown did this type of thing, where it's little side stories and bits from the comics for much of the first half, and then you got a main story in the second half, and I think it's done very well. But where I really think the movie really does shine is in the emotional aspects of the movie. All throughout the film, you're just rooting for Charlie Brown to be recognized, but every opportunity he gets to make his name known to the little red-haired girl, I mean, something bad happens to him. It's just like, you watch this movie and you see Charlie Brown just going through all this shit. Like, he's trying to get her attention at first. He has her pencil that... Why did I say it like that? I was talking like the dude from King of the Hill during the Boggle Championship. Pencil, like that guy. If you know what I'm talking about here, one last pencil, dude. But you know, when her pencil rolls over to his desk, and you know he's holding it. It's not like a thing to give him the motivation to go talk to her. Like Snoopy tries to help him out, then Lucy tries to help him out, and then he decides, okay, I'll answer this dancing contest that she's going to be in. You think he's going to do pretty well, but then he slips on some of the juice that Marcy and them brought in there, and his shoe hits the sprinklers, and everybody leaves the gym, and then they take this test, and you know, everyone's surprised when Charlie Brown gets the perfect score, and you think that, and it turns out it's actually not his score. It was actually a score by Peppermint Patty, who drew a smile on her test thing, and yet she had the smartest score on the thing. I thought that was actually really funny. But I do like, there's one part that doesn't get talked about a lot, where he sees the test, he knows it's not his, he throws it in there, and it looks like he's going to pretend like, like I'm just going to let it slide and just take the credit. But even when he's doing his up there talking to people, it's like a brief couple seconds, and then all of a sudden he's just like, I can't do this, and then he shows up that it was not his test, and it's just like, I mean, he loses a lot of his credibility with the kids around him who thought he was something, and then there's this whole thing with the little red-haired girl where she ends up going to see her grandmother because she's sick, and they have this book report, and he decides I'm going to go ahead and do this. So he gets a copy of War and Peace, which I love the way they set that up, because Peppermint Patty basically tells him that it's a book called Leo's Toy Store by War and Peace, and then he sees Marcy at the library. It's just like, I think this is what you're looking for, and it's War and Peace, which they do a couple of really good gags with the big book. Like, I love one of my favorite ones is when Lucy sees him with the big book, and he's just like, thick book, what are you going to do with that? And he's got this sled, and he's just like, so he starts taking the book, he starts turning the book and like opening it up, flipping the pages, and then he gets the thing on the sled, and even Lucy's just like, pretty smart. He's just like, what am I saying? Like, that's really fun. That's really fun stuff, and I do like that. It's fun. It's interesting to see him spend the whole weekend reading that book and writing this report, getting the motivation from the little red-haired girl. And you think that, okay, that's cool. He's gonna go. He's gonna help her out. He did this during the course of the time she was away. Nothing could possibly go wrong. Then the paper gets flown up into the air with a toy airplane that just shreds it. Just kind of like, come on, like cut this kid a break already, for God's sake. Like, the whole movie, the world's just been going after him. But then by the end, I love the ending of this movie where, he's finally going to have the courage to go talk to the little red-haired girl before she leaves for camp in the summer. And, he gets all these, he's got all these blocks in the way, and, he's just asking for a little bit of luck for once in his life, and all of a sudden the kite-eating tree takes one of the trees down, and he's trying to kick it away. The kite wraps around his leg, goes over this ice cream truck where all these kids are waiting, and it turns out it looks like Charlie Brown's flying a kite in a very, very fun scene. And then it leads to the moment where, he finally has the conversation about the little red-haired girl, and there's this whole thing earlier where, the kids are going to have a pen pal for the summer, and, they put these names in a hat, and Charlie Brown's name comes up, and it's the little red-haired girl who actually is the one that does this, even though, throughout the movie, like, he's been doing all this stuff, and it seemed like that he was afraid that she wasn't even going to notice him. But I do like the conversation that she has with him about, why did she pick him as a pen pal, and he talks about all the good things that he's done that really impressed her, and it was really heartfelt. Like, of all the people that Charlie Brown knows, even his best friends Linus and Snoopy, who actually do care for him, it's the little red-haired girl that says what's great about Charlie Brown, and it ends the film on this really good, positive note. Yeah, it doesn't have the high level of poignancy that the end of A Boy Named Charlie Brown does, when Charlie Brown feels like a loser, and Linus basically tells him, hey, did you notice something? The world didn't come to an end. But, I mean, it's a different thing, I know, but at the same time, the movie ends on a note where Charlie Brown doesn't get everything he wanted, but he has something to look forward to, and I really like that a lot about what this film did. This thing had a lot of baggage on its hands, having to keep the spirit of the classic characters in this universe, not going into the modernization abortion that other franchises have done under Fox's wing, but the Schultz family having creative control and blue skies ambitions to take this to the next level. It worked out. It made a movie that not only was a great tribute to Peanuts in the best way possible, but exceeds on a level that only Pixar has really topped. This movie is great. The Peanuts movie really is one of my favorite movies of the year, and it's the second best animated film of the year I saw behind Inside Out. And yeah, it's just a terrific, terrific film. I really enjoy the hell out of this movie. I love it, man. The Peanuts movie is great, great stuff. What more can you say, man? It's a great film. One of my favorites of the year. Seek it out if you haven't seen it already. Do it for Charlie Brown. So with that said, let's go ahead and move on to the Best Picture winner of the year. And the one that, it's a little questionable about whether or not it should have been Best Picture, but, I mean, I liked it. Spotlight.
Picture of the year. You really want to hear this?
Yeah, Patrick, I do.
Spotlight. Rated R. Now playing.
It's funny how this is compared to The Greatest Show on Earth, which is another film that won Best Picture to win. This was the first Best Picture winner since The Greatest Show on Earth to win only one other Oscar. But that movie in particular, The Greatest Show on Earth, is not seen as a really good movie. In fact, it's considered to be one of the worst Best Picture winners. So in a way, I could see where they're coming from with this probably not being one of the better Best Picture winners. But I mean, the year it won, it wasn't really in a bad category. There were a couple good movies in there that I think should have won this over Spotlight. Bridge of Spies, Mad Max Fury Road, The Martian, The Revenant. I could probably see those movies being better overall. I mean, this is probably right down near the bottom with, The Big Short, which is easily the worst of the bunch. And another movie we're going to get to in a little bit here. But keep in mind, too, that this was also a time when, they had other movies nominated that could have been, that they didn't nominate, like Creed. It was one of those films, Dope. This was Oscar so white. But anyway, this is Spotlight, the year's Best Picture winner, which follows the Boston Globe Spotlight team, the oldest continuously operating newspaper investigative journalism unit in the United States, as an investigation into a decade-long cover-up of widespread and systematic child sex abuse by numerous priests of the Roman Catholic Archdiocese of Boston. Although the plot was original, it's based on a series of stories by the Spotlight team that earned the Globe the 2003 Pulitzer Prize for Public Services. You have a cast that includes Mark Ruffalo, Michael Keaton, coincidentally in another movie where he's working at a newspaper, first one being Paper, Rachel McAdams, John Slattery, Stanley Tucci, Brian Darcy James, Liev Schreiber, and Billy Crudup. And, I mean, I say it's a bad movie. It's not a bad movie. It's a good movie, but the Best Picture winner over Mad Max Fury Road, over The Revenant, over, what was the other one? Bridge of Spies. I could have sworn there was one more I forgot to put in there, but I just had it. I just remember it, but you get the idea. Like, there were better Best Picture winners that could have won, nominees that could have won Best Picture that year. This one, it's one of those ones where when I think of the Best Picture, I'm trying to think of the movie that is going to hold up longer over time than it will when the Zeitgeist movie. And once Spotlight came and went, it really was largely forgotten overall. And yeah, you would have wanted to see a much more memorable movie like a Mad Max Fury Road or The Revenant winning Best Picture. But this isn't a bad movie. It's a good movie overall. It's a well-told story. The acting overall is really good. Mark Ruffalo is really good here. Rachel McAdams, Michael Keaton. There's a really interesting storyline that is something that sadly is never going away, because this is stuff that still is going on. The stuff that they're trying to cover in this. And, nowadays with it, it's also becoming kind of a fossil in its own merits because of how newspapers are shutting down one by one since we've advanced over into the world of the internet and all that. But overall, this is a good movie. Do I think it's the Best Picture of the year? No. I think there are much better movies that should have been nominated, that should have won Best Picture over this, but I don't hate it as much as I do some of the worst Best Picture winners. I mean, this is no King's Speech, this is no Green Book, this is no Coda, this is no Nomadland. I mean, some of those movies aren't terrible, but when I think of Best Picture winners, the movie that's supposed to be the highlight of the year's movies, those aren't films I really think of overall. And this one, I feel like there should have been a much better Best Picture winner, but it's not a bad movie. It's a very entertaining film. It works because of the performances. It works because the story is so captivating, but there's definitely a much better movie that could have won this award easily. So, speaking of that other movie that I was talking about that was also up for Best Picture, let's take a look at that film, and that is Saoirse Ronan in Brooklyn.
Brooklyn, rated PG-13, in select theaters November 4th.
So Saoirse Ronan stars as a young Irish woman who migrates to Brooklyn in the early 1950s to earn employment. After building a life there, she is drawn back to her hometown of Enniscorthy and has to choose where she wants to forge with her future. This is a film that also features Emery Conan, Don Holt Gleason, Jim Broadbent, Julie Walters, directed by John Crowley, and written by Nick Hornsby. And again, kind of like with Spotlight, I don't think it's one of the best picture candidates of the year. I think there are much better movies that could have been nominated for that category. But with that said, though, the movie isn't terrible, and I think it works mostly because of Saoirse Ronan really giving it a role in this leading role. She is very good in this movie. She plays the role very well. The direction overall is really good. The script writing is really solid. It's a nice little romantic drama. It's a film that isn't really trying to do anything groundbreaking or do anything unique or amazing, but it works because the actors are game on it, and there is an intriguing story to tell with all these characters involved. It's an overall enjoyable movie. I wouldn't say it's one of the best movies of the year, but it's a good film overall, and I do recommend checking it out if you haven't seen it. So let's go ahead and move on to our last movie, and that is Bryan Cranston starring as the legendary Dalton Trumbo in Trumbo.
Whisper movie you've written in secret. Fire Dalton Trumbo. I don't think you would be
Trumbo, rated R.
Okay, you should know by now not to fuck around with John Goodman. Did you see The Big Lebowski? He's gonna have you asking about finding a stranger in the Alps or fucking a stranger in the ass, depending on which version of the Big Lebowski you watch. But this is the story of Dalton Trumbo, a famous Hollywood screenwriter who was blacklisted because he was a member of the Communist Party, and he was behind many, many movies that you may be familiar with. He was the guy who wrote Roman Holiday. He's written a number of different movies. He's written, of course, I'm trying to remember what he wrote. He also wrote Spartacus. He did Exodus. He did 30 Seconds Over Tokyo. He did a lot of movies in general, but unfortunately, because he was part of the Communist Party, he was blacklisted, and this movie has a lot of intriguing ideas and a story that is very compelling. To see the story about this guy who was a world-renowned writer, had won awards, but could never really get credit for them because of the fact that he was part of this party in general. And, sorry, my computer froze for a second. There we go. But, it works because Bryan Cranston really does give it his all in this. This is directed by Jay Roach and written by John McNamara. John McNamara, of course, would later go on to write Poor Things and more recently The Roses. For Jay Roach, this is actually his first time outside of his usual comedies that he was directing, like the Austin Powers movies, the Parents films. The Campaign was his most recent film. But this is a really interesting film overall, and I think it works because Bryan Cranston really is giving it his all as Trumbo, and you do want to hear more about this story. It's a fascinating story about this guy who wrote some of the most memorable movies of history, and yet he couldn't really get a whole lot of credit because of the fact that he'd been behind this whole thing, and he had to write these under pseudonyms and all that. And it's a very compelling film overall. It's a well-made film, a very unique film. I like it. I think it was an enjoyable film. Bryan Cranston got an Oscar nomination for this, which he deserved. And yeah. Not much more to say about it, except it's a really good movie worth checking out. If you haven't seen Trumbo, definitely check it out. And thus, with all that said, we wrap up another episode of Time About the Movies. Next time we meet, we'll take a look at the films of Friday, November the 13th. No Jason Voorhees coming around this time around, but we have a Christmas comedy with an ensemble cast, Love the Coopers. We have the film about the Chilean miners, The 33. We have the most fascinating movie that I swear was the film that broke Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie up. Angelina Jolie directed Brad Pitt in this movie, By the Sea. It was a bomb when it came out, but nevertheless, it's a fascinating movie that we're going to delve into, because that's one I really want to talk about. But trying to see what else we got here. Is that it, or is that... Yeah, I guess that's it. Just those three films. I thought we had some more for that, But we will take a look at those three films. That'll be coming up tomorrow here on the channel, so stay tuned for that. But with all that said, thank you so much for watching this. I hope you enjoyed this. If you did, please go ahead and do me the honors of hitting that like button, that subscribe button, and that notification button. Also, don't forget to check out our playlist, and don't forget to check out the previous episode we did. Now, with all that said, whether it's in the past, the present, or the future, I will see you at the movies. Take care.